Hey everybody. So today I thought I'd make a quick video to address a topic that a lot of folks have sent me requests on about one-handed shooting or strong hand or support hand shooting. So decided to pull a couple guns out of the safe today. We're going to use my 1911 just for beginning of this video. So one of the things that obviously that happens when we shoot one-handed is obviously we no longer get the added benefit, of course, of extra support with our support hand gripping and rolling those pressures in to hold the sights as still as possible for us while we're pressing the trigger. So do I change my hand position with my strong hand on the gun? The answer is no. I have the exact same pressure exerted on the gun with my strong hand as it does when I build that two-hand grip on the gun. One of the key elements, and this is tip number one, to building a better one-handed shooting technique or shooting platform is when I build my pressure on the gun, right? So that pressure comes from my palm along the backstrap of the gun, and that's built just as I come out of the gun from the holster, and my safety comes off. When that safety comes off with my thumb, right? My thumb immediately gets high on the beaver tail right back through here, just as if it were going to be out of the way and flagged high so that I could grip my support hand thumb in, or my support hand in, but of course my support hand is going to go straight to my body. When it goes straight to my body, of course, that's the two things that the hands do together simultaneously. But when that thumb comes down off the safety and I'm prepping the gun then to be fired, I'm going to build pressure with my strong hand or with my shooting hand right in this area here into the gun. So I'm going to exert pressure by flagging my thumb up. I'm isolating this particular portion of the thumb into the backstrap. So just as you can see where I'm really starting to flex that muscle in the hand right through here, I want to flex that muscle as if I'm like trying to pinch the gun along the beaver tail back here into the hand. I want to apply that pressure just like so. And I want to crank that pressure in, right? Because what that does is it allows me to get, again, some leverage on this side of the gun where I can't apply that leverage with my support hand. By doing so, now I've isolated the gun just a little bit more. I probably added another 10 to 15%, right? And when we're shooting one-handed, I want as much leverage as I can put on the gun to keep the sights as still as possible while I'm pressing the trigger. So if I get that thumb in up high on the gun and I really crank the pressure in through here, squeezing that gun, I get some benefit of not having that muzzle move all the way through the press of the trigger. Or in that case, right, I'm slapping the trigger. I'm just accelerating that pressure all the way through. So if I hold the sights very, very still, I get a little bit of movement there because I relaxed my thumb. So if I build that thumb pressure in, I reduce that quite a bit. So reducing that quite a bit, now it adds some leverage or adds some advantage to the gun so that if I get a little greedy on the trigger, I'm able to hold the sights to a much more acceptable level onto a target as I'm as I'm presenting the gun to the target, and I'm able to then press the trigger and not move the sights as well. So that's technique number one. Number two is when I'm shooting the gun one-handed, and it doesn't matter whether I'm shooting it, to go back to that point, doesn't matter whether I'm shooting with my left hand or whether I'm shooting with my right hand, you'll notice my thumb comes straight up and I'm exerting that pressure on the gun right back here, right? I'm squeezing the back of that beaver tail to hold that gun, to apply pressure evenly on both sides of the gun as much as I can with one hand. So secondly is I want the gun to behave as similar as possible to how it would if I got to shoot two hands on the gun, right? Why? Well, some guys will tell you, well, you want you to cant the gun. I want to be able to cant the gun and put the gun, put the sights directly in front of my dominant eye. I am more an advocate of I want the gun to be as perpendicular as possible, straight up and down, or as vertical as possible, because that's what happens with the gun when I point the gun with two hands on it. And I want the gun to behave as similar as I can, with one hand as it does when I have two hands on it, because that's what visually I'm used to seeing. I'm used to tracking the sights up and down. I want the sights to return back to zero the same way, or as similar as the same way as it does when I've got a two-hand grip on the gun. So there's a couple of ways I can do that. If I simply just pull my support hand off the gun, the problem is I've taken away just about all of the benefit, right? Or I've opened up this entire area, and simple physics tells us that the gun is going to want to lift or lift the path of least resistance. So since I've taken all the resistance off of this side panel of the gun, what do you think the gun's going to do? As soon as I press the trigger, bang, the gun's going to go up. It's not going to lift up and come back straight down. It's going to lift off and to the right, or as a right-handed shooter, it's going to lift off and to the left. And when it comes down, it's not going to come down consistently to exactly where I was pointing it before. It's going to come off to the left and it's going to come down. I'm going to have to kind of fish around for the sights or strengthen other parts of my body to make that gun return the same way it did before. So there's one other thing that we can do to kind of leverage that to our advantage. One, of course, is I want to hold the gun as perpendicular as possible. Secondly, I want to step into the gun. So I'm going to step back here a little bit. So instead of having this isosceles platform and then just taking the hand off and then just trying to do everything with just the upper body and kind of muscle the gun in, I'm going to simply take my lead foot and step into the gun. As I step into the gun, as you can just see from my body, I'm very triangulated or kind of L-shaped away from the backstrap of the gun. So when the gun fires off, it's going to lift off and to the right. If I step into the gun, now I've centered my body directly in behind the sights. So guess what kind of leverage I get now on the gun? The gun is going to track much more straight and true as it did, just like it does when I've got two hands on it, and I've got an equilateral grip along both sides, and I keep that gun centered directly in my body, just like so. So without that, I've taken away that third leg or third structure of support or second structure of support on the gun. So by turning my body, now I've got my entire body and I've aligned the shoulder on arm throughout the gun all the way through my body. That helps. That helps immensely. So that gets the gun now to start to track less often to the right or off and to the left and a little bit more straight back. So now that the recoil, again, not only is manageable, but sight alignment and sight returnability is more manageable. But there's one added other little benefit that we can do to ensure that the gun behaves almost, I say almost, keyword, almost identically to how it does when I've got two hands on it. And I want you just to watch just my shoulder. So as I step forward and I'm ready to shoot, right? I've got the gun horizontal or vertical, right? But my elbow, if I were to put a straight line on my elbow, and I'm just going to lay my arm here, my elbow is still canted out just the same way it does when I've got two hands on it. So the problem is once the gun fires, the articulation on my elbow is going to allow that gun to lift off and to the left, off and to the right, and it's going to return kind of unbalanced and inconsistent. So if I take my shoulder and drive my shoulder into the target, right? So if I drive my shoulder into the target, by driving my shoulder into the target, now I've really reinforced my body in behind the gun to control how the sights are able to be managed. But what I've also done is I've changed that angle of articulation in the elbow by driving the elbow in, or driving the shoulder towards the target. Now my elbow is pointed straight down, as if I was like connecting a straight line between my elbow and the top of my lead foot. As a right-handed shooter, I would do the exact same thing. So I get in behind the gun, and as I step forward and roll my shoulder or drive my shoulder towards the target, now I end up with a gun that is going to behave nearly identically as it would as if I've got two hands on the gun. So again, thumb flagged, but more importantly, not just get the thumb tip up and flagged. I want to flag the thumb up and just watch how that hand flexes against the back tang of the gun. It does the exact same thing. Even on a plastic gun, I build that pressure in, and as I flag that thumb up, you can see that hand flex and start to build pressure and tension along the back strap and along the offside or the support hand side of the gun so that I can leverage more advantage against the gun to hold the sight as still as possible through the trigger. The other thing, of course, then is to, again, step into the target and drive the shoulder into the target to get the elbow articulation straight down so that the gun starts to cycle, again, nearly identically to how it does when I've got two hands on the gun. Building that consistency will allow you then to start shooting with a higher degree of confidence when you're shooting one-handed, whether it be left-handed or right-handed, and not have the gun move around or not fight you so much when you're shooting one-handed. So anyway, I hope those tips help, and I'll see you next time.